And there are people in this room who do have children, and there are people in this room who don't have children. And the people who don't have children, they think they know, don't they? They think they know. They think they know what it means to have children. Sometimes they chat about it, don't they, in their little couples? You know, oh, I'd love to start a family one day with you. It'd be lovely. You'd make a really good dad. Oh, I think you'd be an amazing mum. It'd be so. Wouldn't it be so lovely having little versions of you and me running around? I'd love to have a family. And you think you know what you're talking about. You have no idea. You have no idea what it's like. You have no idea how difficult things will become in your life. Things that you don't even consider to be things will become nearly impossible when you have children. I'm talking about things like leaving the house, for example. This is how people without children leave the house. Shall we leave the house? Yes. This is how I leave the house almost every day. Lucas, Oscar, come downstairs. We're late. Why aren't you downstairs? Put your shoes on. I don't know where my shoes are. Put your shoes on. Go and find your shoes. Where did you see them last? On my feet. After that, get your shoes on. Come here, come here. Arms up, arms in, arms in, arms up, arms in. That's my wife. She's so tired, she can't dress herself. Arms in, what arms, darling? Where are we going? I want to go to bed. Where are we going, darling? Darling, you've got Lucas's shoes on your hands. I found your shoes, darling. You put your shoes on. Where's Ozzy? Come downstairs! We're late! Put your coat on. I don't want to wear my coat. You know, people without children, you know how you do zips up? I've seen how much time you have in your lives. How you focus on it. You get the one with the fabric. You just pop it in, don't you? It nestles in. Then you pause, thinking about your free life and what you might need to do with it later that day. And then you just glide up, don't you? Do you think I have time for that in my life? Every single morning. Oh, ruined it. Stay still. You're going to have to put another coat on. I can't. I've ruined this zip. I'm sorry. I've made the situation worse. Ozzy! My 3-year-old will never come downstairs. The only way to get him to leave the house is we have to bluff. We have to pretend that we're leaving without him. It's the only way it'll work. We have to all go, bye-bye, Ozzy. We're all going then. We're all going. My other son loves it, the 6-year-old. We're leaving Ozzy. We're going to stay here. I hate him. Don't be so rude about your brother. Say goodbye. We're not really leaving. We're pretending to leave, okay? Say goodbye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, Ozzy. Bye-bye. But he doesn't care. He just goes, bye-bye. Then we have to come back in and explain to him, we're not really leaving, darling. We love you. It's okay. I'll buy you something if you come. Will you come if I buy you something? This is every single time we leave the house. The other day, we're leaving the house, and I just had enough. I just said to my wife, I'm sorry, I can't do this. We're bluffing. We're saying bye-bye to him. Then my wife says, let's go and get him. I'm like, stop. No, I've had it. No, stop. I cannot go through this every single time we leave the house. It's driving me insane. Okay? I say we call his bluff. I think he has to learn a lesson. Okay? Let's go. Let's just go. Let's go to Corfu. Let's have a nice holiday. You've no idea what it's like. You childless people. You have no idea. Driving. You go driving. You drive in cars, don't you? Driving along. Yay. What's the biggest drama you have to put up with? Oh, it's a bit chilly. Oh, put the blower on. Oh, that's nice now. Oh, look, they've opened a new Carluccio. We should go there. We could go there any night. We could go there any night. Oh, what's this song? I love this one. Freedom! Freedom! I strap my children into the car. I work out what'll cut off the blood supply, then I ease it a bit. Stay there! We try and behave normally. Oh, what's this song? It's The Wheels on the Bus Go ding, 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 ding. Again! There's a new Carluccio's there. We will never go there. I was checking my children in the rearview mirror to see that they're safe. We're on the motorway, okay? You just angle it to check that they're both okay, because, you know, you're looking after them. Neither of them were there. They had both wound the windows down and had their heads on the motorway out of the window. Yay! Both of them, either side. Yay! My wife and I just lost it. They can't hear us. They're having the times of their lives. Yay! Motorway, going 80 miles an hour to stick my head out of my window to try and communicate with my child. Get in the car! What are you saying? my wife's doing it too. Get in the car! What is it, Mummy? All four of us had our heads out of the window. Meanwhile, a childless couple is driving past. Oh, look at the kids. I'd love to start a family one day. You have no idea what you're talking about. Sleeping. Sleeping at night. This is how people without children. Yeah, most nights, yeah. Good night, darling. Good night. Good night. Sometimes you go, sleep well, and the other one goes, I will. I will. That's how cocky, how arrogant you are. I will, I know I will. Good night, darling. Have a good sleep. Good night. It's been a long time since my wife and I said good night to each other, okay? Now we just go, good luck. Good luck to you today. All through the night, they're screaming, Daddy, 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 Mommy, Mommy. Sometimes they just wake up wide awake in the middle of the night. I'm asleep, it's like 2 o'clock in the morning. I wake, you know, when sometimes you don't realise it, but you sort of half open your eyes. Sometimes when you're asleep, I half open my eyes. My son is in my face. And, what time is it? What time is it? 2 o'clock in the morning. What do you want? I want to go to school. Go to school? What are you talking about? It's to go back to bed. I've got my shoes on. You do. You found your shoes. I fixed my jacket. How did you? Shut up. What are you doing? It's 2 o'clock in the morning, you idiot. Go to bed. Where's Ozzy? He's by the front door. He's never been there in his life. 2 in the morning! I have no idea.
So, welcome to Pairing Up Purpose. My name is Ben. I'm one of the pastors here. Amanda Nepple is here as well. She's a pastor that works with me to organize this class. And for the next few weeks, we're going to be taught by Halley. And everybody give Halley a round of applause. So this is an opportunity to talk about behavioral challenges, and when we have good, healthy behaviors, we have good, happy children. And so hopefully you are here for that. If you're here for something else, you're in the wrong room. The comedy's good too, so if you're here for comedy, that's a good thing to come for. Hopefully it'll be PG for the rest, right?
Yeah.
I didn't think anybody here was under 13, so if it's PG-13, I think that's okay, I guess. And we'll go from there. But Allie, I want you to know, is somebody that we really admire as a parent. Allie is also a foster parent and has been, and somebody who has really thought through this stuff in a really integrated way. And so I know you're going to get blessed by this class. So you've been teaching classes on parenting here for how long? Like a while?
Yeah, probably at least 7 years, 8 years.
7 years, okay. So hopefully you had a chance to take one of her classes, and this is a good way to get a refresher. And if you haven't, then this is a great time for you to dive into this stuff. So again, let's give Allie a round of applause.
Yay! I always like to start with something funny, so I hope you didn't mind. There were a couple little bad words in there, but it was funny. It's very funny. Parenting is funny. If you can't laugh, what else are you going to do, right? It's funny. Okay, but I think we need to start with a prayer. So let's all pray for a second, okay? Dear God, thank you so much for bringing us here into your house. Thank you for all the little children you've blessed us with, whether they be our own, whether they be others that are in our neighborhoods that we consider blessings to us, or just little kids that we love on. Let us to shine your light into each and every one of them so that they know that they are a blessing. And we just hope that you'll be there with us and help us so that we can laugh in every instance, even when we might not feel like we can. Thank you, Lord, for all your help in every way and in all ways in our life. And we all bless you and say amen. All right, so we are going to start. First, let me just say, he talked a little bit about, I'm a parent of 2 children. However, they're not children anymore. They're adults. So they're 21 and 23. So they are, they're past most of the difficult stuff. I have had 11 what we consider return or long-term foster kids who stayed with us at least a year, if not longer. mostly sibling groups of 2 and 3. So in our household at any one time, we always had at least 2 kids, usually up to 5. So there was a lot of in and outs, a lot of kid managing. Learned a lot through that. It was a real blessing in our lives. And also in my job, right now I work in early childhood, but I'm also part of I work with kids that have challenging behaviors. So I do this every day. So this is part of my life. I practice it every single day, even though I don't have little kids in my house anymore. I did it today all day. So it's something that I live and I do, and it's kind of created a weird little, I really like behavior. So I read on it all the time. I read books. I'm one of those weird people who read like journal articles. But what I've found is that I work with parents too, and that it is very confusing. Parenting books are very boring. Like you buy one with the best intention of like learning from it, and you make it like a third of the way through. It's very boring and you put it down, or it's hard to apply what you read. And so what I've done is I've read a lot of parenting books and done lots of research, and I take the pieces that are the most relevant or the things that work the fastest and the easiest, and that's what I try to tell you. That's stuff that works in 90% of the situations, so that you don't have to go through and comb through, I can take this piece from this book and this piece from this book. They all basically say a lot of the same things, but I take the research principles that work the best. Some of them say things that aren't necessarily based in research, but you wouldn't know that if you don't read it. So I try to take the best stuff and tell you what works. So what we're going to do tonight is we're going to talk about some of those strategies, and we're starting with the beginning part, okay? But what we're going to do here is we're going to talk about not just all that stuff, the behavior stuff, and how do you deal with that stuff, but also how do we do it with love? Because we're here in church, and we want to base it upon the Bible and what God tells us. And this is one of my favorites. And anytime you go to a parenting class, this is usually the one that they show. So let's read it together, okay? Proverbs 22:6, help me with it. Teach your children to choose the right path, and when they are older, they will remain upon it. Isn't that what we all want? That's what we want in the long run. But if you had little ones, it's kind of hard to see down the road and hope that they're going to get there. So what we're going to talk about tonight is we're going to talk about those techniques that we talked about that are in behavior principles, that also link to methods that are easy, and that are things that you can do, hopefully that are simple, that you can add into your life, that are empirically sound in behavior research. I'm not going to tell you something that is a weird out wacky thing that doesn't have any research behind it, but also we're going to use scriptures and prayer as our foundation, because God disciplines us out of love, and as parents we need to you also parent our children with love, just like God parents us. So that's what we're going to do. All right, so we're going to talk about, first of all, some critical features. I don't know which way to point this. There we go. Critical features, how to teach anything. And this is how to teach anything. But this is really relevant when we're talking about positive behavior as well. So here's the critical features: structure and predictability, increased teaching, and increased corrective feedback. So we're going to talk about the first two tonight. This is like when I'm here for 3 Wednesdays. So tonight we're going to talk about the first two, and then we're going to talk about the last one, the next two, okay? Because where do we all want to start? On that last one, right? If behavior is not going well, that's where our brain goes. How can I do the discipline? I need the discipline side. So we're going to do something counterintuitive, which is what you should always do. You should always start with the structure and predictability and the increased teaching, and that's not where our brains go. So we're going to start there because it's really, really important. Now, if you think about structure and predictability, I always like to think about school, because if one adult can handle 28 children and handle them well, I should be able to handle my 5, right? And they have them all day long. One adult, 28 children, and they handle it all day. So I keep thinking, okay, how can I use some of the principles that they use? Well, if you think about school, there is a lot of structure, and there is a lot of predictability. It's not always predictable. Their days change. Stuff changes, but they build predictability even into the change. So we're going to use those same principles because we want to have, easygoing households where it makes it easy for them and for us. So we're going to talk about some of that. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is house rules. How many of you guys actually have established house rules? Anybody? Okay. It's something like we think is like intuitive, right? We think people should know right from wrong, or we think they should know to be kind and loving, but really, that's one of the first things that we should start with is actually establishing house rules. You want to make sure that you don't I try to say not more than 5. That seems, a lot of times when we get started on this, we start coming up with all kinds of rules, and we think like even up to 10. You want to make them easy, and they can kind of work in any situation, but I usually say 5 is a good amount, because you can remember those, and you can commit those to memory, and anybody can do that. 18-month-olds can learn rules if there's 5 and if you make it simple. So we're talking 18-month and up, okay? Can use this. So house rules is one of the first things. And the important thing about house rules is that you want to state them as a do statement. I talk about do statements a lot because when we often, as adults, will say don't something, like don't hit, don't lie, we say the opposite. And what happens is when you say don't something, the last thing they're left is that last word. So if you say don't hit, they hear the last thing they heard was hit. Don't lie, they hear lie. That is a developmental stage that I don't know if you know about. Kids go through and they, remember back when they were like 2 and 3, and you would say, do you want, like let's say you have 2 treats, and you say, do you want the graham crackers or the goldfish? And they'll say goldfish, because it's the last thing you said, but they reach for the graham crackers, because they're just stating the last thing that they heard, but that's not really what they wanted. That's a stage where they hear the last thing. So we don't want that. We don't want them to hear the inappropriate thing. We want to hear, what do I do? What's the thing that I actually am supposed to do? Just like if your kid is a constant runner, if you say, don't run, you're not teaching them what to do instead. You're thinking like they'll figure that out on their own. Use the do statement. So what's the opposite of running? Walking. So instead, walking feet, I use that all the time. Please walk. That's why you'll hear, like in school, when kids are walking, most of the time you'll hear, walking please, as they're going out. So they automatically know what they're supposed to do. So we're going to come up with house rules, and we want them to be do statements, things that they should do. It can be a challenge, but you can do it. I promise you, you can do it. So I'm going to show you a quick little video here that'll give you some ideas. They don't have it perfectly. They're not all do statements, but a lot of them are. So I just want you to kind of watch this. It'll give you some ideas.
Rule number 1, eat at the table. If we eat in the bedroom or living room, then the house can get very dirty, which is why we eat at the dining room. Rule number 2, sit on the couches.
When we were little, it was fine for us to jump on the couches, but as we got older, the frame started to break, so we made a rule that we had to sit on the couches.
Rule number 3, no running, hiding, or wrestling.
When we're outside, we can play however we want, but when we're inside, in order for Dad to keep his sanity, there can't be any running, any hiding, or any wrestling.
Rule number 4, mind your own business. In order to keep the peace, we are not allowed to tattletale. And that's why we always mind your own business. Rule number 5, keep your hands to yourself.
Here at home, we try to cultivate an atmosphere of mutual respect and love. And nobody likes a pest, so we teach the children to keep their hands to themselves.
Rule number 6, touch it once.
There's a lot of people in this house, which
which means there's a lot of stuff. And when there's a lot of stuff, that means that if we don't put it away the first time, it's gonna get really messy in here. Like this glass of orange juice. Once I'm done drinking it, I don't just leave it on the counter or put it in the sink. I'll put it right in the dishwasher and be done with it the first time.
Rule number 7. Love.
I want it. Okay, Jade, you can have it.
Love means sacrificing what you want for your brothers or sister.
All right, so it wasn't perfect, but I love it. They had 7, so you could do 7 if you want. I think 5 is easy. We had 3 in our house. It was always respect yourself, respect others, and respect property. And that was our 3. And then we always had, treat others the way you'd want to be treated was sort of just our overarching motto. But we just had 3, and anything can fall under that. So you can come up with very broad ones, or you can come up with more specific ones, but I want you to actually think about it. So think about what your rules might be, come up with them, actually write them down. If you have kids that are a little bit older that are like 5 or up, come up with them and then talk to them about it and ask them, do you have anything that you would want to add? You would be surprised. If they are in school or preschool, depending on how old they are, they might have a rule that you hadn't thought about that is a really good one. So I would add it. So even though it might be number 6, I would add it. Take their information. Or you might change one that you have to be theirs. But it's a way to make them feel a part of it and actually write them out. If you have non-readers, they're not reading yet, just draw a little picture next to it. It does not have to be pretty, it doesn't have to be perfect, or you could go on and get clip art and put it next to it. Because even little kids who can't read yet, if you have pictures and you tell them what they are and you reference them, they totally will learn what the rules are. So it's a good reminder for both you and for them what your expectations are. A lot of times we just think they should just know. Well, let's just make it clear so they know what the rules are, and then you can reference them, because of course life is not going to be perfect just because you post the rules. They're going to break some rules, but this way you can talk about, we have this rule, and then now what are we going to do about it? So there's a clear expectation from the get-go. Okay, so what I want you to do is I want you to brainstorm what those might be, and I want you to establish do statements. This is like a little, honestly, I'm not going to do this for very long, but does anybody have one that they might use in their house? It could be one you heard. I'm going to ask for 3 ideas. We're not going to move on until I get 3. 3 ideas for a rule. What do you think? What do you think?
Take care of you.
That was a good one. She said, take care of you. That's a good one. I like that. I need 2 more ideas for a rule. Yeah? Eat at the table. That's right. She said, eat at the table. That's a great one, especially if you have wonder eaters. Yeah. One more before we can move on. What do you think? Oh, she wasn't raising her hand. Yes, go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry, we have 2.
Take your shoes off when we get to the house.
Yeah, shoes off in the house. I like that. Shoes off in the house. Did you have another one? Take care of the house. That's a perfect one. That is overreaching. That's all really good ones. So it could be anything, especially if you're having a perpetual issue. That might be a great one to write a do statement about. So do that when you go home. That's something I'm going to leave you with. Okay. I also want you to think about once you have these rules established, they don't have to stay that way. They're not written in stone. They can be flexible. So let's say down the road, a while down the road, something comes up, and it tends to be an ongoing problem. If you need to establish a new rule, that's totally fine to amend your rules. Or if there's one that everyone seems to be doing really well with, just tell the kids, you know what? Everyone seems to be doing really well with this. We're going to take this one off. We're going to put this one in now. What do you think about that? And then ask them for their opinion. This is always good if they have a little bit of buy-in. Okay, so that's where we're going to start on rules. So the next thing we're going to talk about, let's see, I don't even know what my next thing is. Let me see. Oh, here's some more examples. So this is a book that I reference sometimes called The Tough Kid Parent Book, which is a really good reference if you ever want to look for things. But these are their ideas. Follow directions, talk friendly, take care of our house, treat pets nicely, and be kind. That's great. So those are just some ideas for you to think about. All right, so now if we think about predictability and increased teaching, this kind of goes with both of those. We want to start with positives. Remember I said the first thing, when things are going south in our house and they're not going well, that's where all your brain power goes. You get very irritated and frustrated, and all your brain power goes to your frustration because it's taking all your brain power to deal with it. And then what we tend to do is we want to figure out the discipline. What I want you to do is that counterintuitive thing. And if you already have your structure and some of your expectations in place, that doesn't mean they're going to magically fix themselves. But I want you to do what doesn't feel natural. If ever things are going south, I want you to increase the positives. That seems wrong. But I have to constantly remind the teachers that I work with, the parents that I work with, and myself that when things start to go south, the first thing I should do before I start looking at adding in more consequences is I should increase the positives. Because sometimes if you do that, you don't have to do the consequences, and everyone feels better. It sounds funny, but because you spend so much time thinking about the negative and talking about the negative, a lot of know this and know that, and you need to follow the rule, you start changing the words that come out of your mouth that at least some, if not more, should be positive than negative. Your attitude, your own attitude, will start to change, and your child's attitude will start to change. But that's counterintuitive. That's not what you're going to want to do. So I want you to leave here and think, what do I do when things start to go south? I need to increase the positive, even though that's not what you're going to want to do. So here's some ideas about increasing the positive. I don't mean I'm not some hippy-dippy person who says like, oh, if you just start saying the positive things, everything will work out. No, consequences need to be a part of that too. But this is so important. That's why I talk about it first, because it's not the part that we want to do. Okay, so what I want you to do is I want you to think about positives, and it brings attention to the things that you want them to learn in a positive way. So, and not only saying positives, but if you add a tangible, something they can touch and feel and see with a positive statement, it makes that positive statement even more attention-grabbing. So in our house, we had marbles, only because I'm lazy and I'm not creative, and I had marbles. That's the only reason. I've had other people come up with like really great ideas. My favorite that I talk about a lot is a person who had warm and fuzzies. She took like these little pom-pommy things, and she had this real fancy little jar that she kept them in. I just thought that was very cute. Another person had something they called them hugs or something like that, and that was what they collected. But I have other people who use, like dried beans, or they use buttons, or whatever you have. It doesn't matter. Something that you can collect, pennies, anything you can collect, and you're going to try to fill a jar. That's what this jar is. It's just like a Caught You Being Good fishbowl. You want to make sure it's not too large. If you're collecting something small, like beans, let it be a small jar. Your object is to fill it up. So you want to fill it up, because you want to make sure that they're getting the feeling of accomplishment. But what these positives and having this tangible is I want you to catch your kids doing something positive, anything positive. So especially if you're having like a really hard time, it could be something as simple as, I love how you're sitting on your chair. You get a marble for that. Let's say you're having a really hard time with your kids touching each other, bugging each other, but let's say there's a moment where they're sitting there and they're next to each other. You guys are doing a great job sitting next to each other. I'm going to give you both a marble for that. Well, not only did they hear the positive, but they get some kind of reward for it. Now you think, a marble, what's the big deal? It actually makes a big deal to them. But there's a couple rules around the marbles, or whatever you're going to call it. I'm going to call it marbles just because that's what I used. And I always tell my kids before we start is that marbles are great. I can give them to you at any time. I'm going to catch you doing anything that's good. But only moms or dads or the adult who's in charge can give out marbles. Only the adults can give them. And you can't ask for them. If you ask for them, I can't give you one. It's just one of the rules. That's how I explain it. Now, as an adult, you need to know another rule that you're not going to tell the kids. The other rule is you can't take them away. We always want to take them away. That's where our brains go. We give them, we take away. Nope, you cannot take them away. This is only additive. And you work as a family group to gain the marbles. So, let's say you're going to Target, which is super fun. As a whole family, 5 children going to Target. Woo! So, you are thinking, this is going to be a fun trip. So you are on the way to Target, and you're thinking, and you're telling your kids as you're getting out, wow, I wonder how many marbles we can get here today. So we've got to get a few things on our list. I bet we might be able to get a few. I wonder how many you can get. Let's see how many you can get. Now you're going to have to remind me, because I might forget. Here's the other thing, you don't have to remember how many marbles there are. This is not like, you don't have to tally it. This is a low-key thing. Put it on them. So you're in Target. You've actually walked across the parking lot with all 5 children. No one ran. We have hands held. Maybe let's just say you're just trying to get to the end of the car. You've gotten to the end of the car. Everyone's still with you. Oh my gosh, look at this. You're holding my hand. You're holding my hand. You're staying with the group. I'm giving you 3 marbles. That's amazing. Okay, now help me remember 3 marbles. And then, okay, so we're going to walk all the way in. Let's see if we can get some more. You walk in. You get inside the door. Look at that. We made it in the door. You guys are doing such a great job. 2 more. What's that? 3 and 2, 5. 5 marbles. Help me remember. And then you get them in the cart. Now remember, we all have to stay by the cart. All right, let's see if we can stay by the cart. And you can dole them out. You're at the cereal aisle. You're at the head of the cereal aisle. And you're standing there as a pack. And you say, okay, it's the cereal aisle. Can we make it down the cereal aisle without anybody grabbing anything? I bet we can. Let's see if we can do it. Ready? And you get halfway down and you're like, we've done it so far. I think we need 3 more marbles. Okay, I think we're up to 8, something like that. Okay, 3 more. Let's see if we can make it the rest of the way. It becomes kind of like a fun game. It doesn't matter how many there are. If you make it home and you've gotten 29 marbles, who cares? It's just 29 marbles. And then let's say you have to make some other stops on the way home, and you get home and you've forgotten. And you get home and you're like, how many marbles did we get? I kind of forgot. And let's say one of your kids says 35, and you forgot. You don't know. You're like, okay, 35. Who cares? They're just marbles. So you count out the marbles. Oh, good counting activity, right? You're counting them, you're throwing them all in, all these marbles. Wow, that's amazing. Lots of good praise. And during that, you're doing lots of good positive reinforcement for the things that you like. Now, be specific. When you're giving out your praise, thank you for staying next to the cart. You get a marble. You held my hand. That was awesome. You get a marble. We made it down the cereal aisle with no one picking anything up. That's why we got the marble. So be specific in your praise with your tangibles. Makes a big deal. So what? So you fill up your marble jar, right? You're catching this stuff. It makes it fun because you're having fun. They'll start having fun about positive things. So you fill your marble jar up. This does not have to be a big event. At the end of your marble jar, okay, another rule for the adults. When you begin on this marble journey, or whatever it is you're going to have, do not say what you're going to do when it fills up. Do not say that. We want to say things like, ooh, when we fill our jar up, we'll go to the zoo. No, what's going to happen is you're probably going to fill the jar up on a Monday, and you can't go to the zoo till maybe the weekend. But this weekend, you've got to go to Grandma's birthday party, and so we can't do it this weekend, so then it would have to be pushed off. So don't do that. Don't say what you're going to do when you fill it up. Wait until it gets filled up, because you never know when that's going to happen. Wait until it gets filled up, and then when it gets filled up, then decide what you're going to do. But you want to make it pretty fast. Here's some of the things that we did at our house. Easy things. We would have a breakfast night for dinner, and we'd all come to dinner in pajamas. That was fun. We had a blast. Some of my kids' favorite things were we would have a candlelight dinner, especially this time of year when it gets dark. They thought that was really cool. We would turn all the lights off. We'd have candles on the table, and then we'd tell stories. And they thought that was the coolest thing in the world. Or they'd have a movie night. They called it movie night. It was actually where they watched one episode of Scooby-Doo on the TV, and they sat on a blanket in the family room in front of the TV, and I gave them frozen pizza on a blanket, and they watched Scooby-Doo for 20 minutes, and they thought they'd gone to heaven. These are not hard things, so you can come up with simple things, but they think it's a big deal because you're rewarding them with it. Now, I do have some ideas so that if you get to the rewards, I have some things on Pinterest. So if you see on the things, it says, if you want ideas on rewards, I mean, there are literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of ideas saved on here. So you don't have to think them up. If you don't know what Pinterest is, you can just put it into your browser and look, this amazing world pops up to you. If you search for my name, Alice and Halley, there's no space. I have lots of boards because I'm weirdly obsessed with it, but there is one particular board called For Class, and everything on that board has to do with behavior for this age kid between 18 months and 12. So anything on there is going to be something that's behaviorally appropriate, research-based, good materials, and there are lots of reward ideas if you want them. So that's a place to go to look. So that's what you do as far as giving them positive behavior support. Now, that's something I want you to do when you go home. I want you to first come up with rules, hopefully 5, write them down, post them, set up clear expectations, and then I want you to start with some positives. I want you to start a positive jar. I don't care what it looks like. It could be a fancy pants jar that you make. It could be an old peanut butter jar. I don't care. Just start it and start giving some positives around those things that you want them to notice. Those things, and be specific in your positive praise. You'll be surprised at how quickly your mental status will change. It'll get more positive because you're saying positive things, and they will react to your positiveness. If your child is a particularly sticky child, meaning that they like to do a lot of negative behaviors, sometimes at the beginning, when you start giving a lot of positives, they actually react the opposite. So let's say you have one that you're having to give a lot of reminders to all the time. If you start giving positive praise, sometimes they almost will turn around and do something negative immediately because it's like it's hard for them to hear a positive. They want to do an opposite reaction. I just ignore that. It's kind of a common occurrence because they kind of like the idea of getting the adults all worked up. So don't worry about it. Let's say you have a child and you say, great job sitting next to your sister. And right after that, I'm going to give you a marble. And right after that, they turn around and they pinch their sister. I will have a consequence for that, but you are not going to take away that marble, and I'm not going to say anything in particular about the fact that they just got a marble. It will dissipate over time. It's just like a reaction. They're not used to getting the positives. They're trying to go back to what they're used to, and it's not a problem. It will go away. But they're just looking for negative reinforcement and positive reinforcement have the same reaction in your brain, and they're just used to getting it that way. It will change over time. But don't be surprised. That does happen, and sometimes people come back to me like, I tried to start doing the positives, and my kid went the opposite direction. So it's okay. That's actually a normal reaction. Don't worry about that if that happens. It usually only occurs in about 20% of kids. So you probably won't have one in your house, but if you do, it's all right. It's okay if it happens. We'll get to what you do for the consequence. Okay, so I do want you to set up a positive jar with positive rewards. Here's some ideas I'm going to throw out because I wrote them down so I wouldn't forget. Have a popcorn party. Have a special dessert that you might let them choose options for. I talked about some of these. Do a special game night. Flashlight tag is a lot of fun, especially this time of year when it's dark outside. You could go somewhere. You could go to a park. You could go to a store, go to a movie. And another one that I think is interesting is I had one family that did a scratch your back night where they would, turn like in a row and they'd all scratch this way. And then they'd turn and they all scratch this way while they sat on the couch together and watched something. It's like, okay, cool. Great. Whatever works for you. Okay. I just thought that was kind of fun. Okay. So we've talked a little bit. So this reason why the visual positive jar is under predictability and increased teaching is that it's becoming predictable that they're learning to pay attention when you give them the tangible, Like, oh, I'm going to give you a marble for that. It increases their teaching. Like, that is something that is important. So it becomes predictable that when you give the marble, that's something I'm supposed to be doing. And you're also increasing your teaching around the things that you want to see, not the negative reaction to something that they're doing, but you're increasing your teaching as to what you want to see. Okay, so that's why it falls underneath this. Okay, so let's go to the next one. Now we're just going to look at increased teaching. Okay, so we've talked about the positive jar, teaching with tangibles for attention. Here's the next one. I want you to do 10 positives. I don't mean the 10 positives, well, it can be 10 positives in a marble jar, but I want you to try to say 10 positive things to each member of your family every day. Now, the weird thing is, sometimes that's really hard. Like, you would think 10 positive things in a whole day should be easy. Sometimes that's hard because we've gotten out of the habit of it. So for every single member of your family, and I'm also talking about your spouse, which is weird. Sometimes that's the hardest thing for us to do, is to say something positive to our spouse. But it's also very important for your child to hear you saying that to your spouse so they recognize that you don't only say positive things to kids, you also say positive things when you're in a relationship with other people. You're modeling. You're being a role model, okay? So it doesn't matter what it is. I want you to say 10 positive things. Try to keep it as a do statement. And, if it has to be said, like if you're really struggling, it could be something as simple as, I use this one all the time. I love it when you're next to me and I can give you a hug. They don't have to do anything but be standing there, and I can give them a positive for that. Or I will say, you have the best smile. I love your smile. If you can get it out of them, that's a huge thing. So these positives don't have to be like an action thing, but it is something that you want to see. Even if they're just sitting and playing nicely for a moment, and that's something you struggle with, say, look, you're sitting by yourself and you're playing, that is so cool. I love seeing you playing with Legos. That's a positive statement. So try to say 10 per person in your household every day. And if you get home and you recognize it's the end of the night and you haven't said any, it's okay to steamroll it and say 10 in a row. That's totally okay. They'll be like, what is going on? Because you're saying all these positive things. You'll be like, you know what? I'm gonna front load the positives. Here you go. I love this and I love that. And they sometimes think it's funny and they do these crazy things. It's totally okay. But you have to get yourself into the habit of it, and it feels weird at first. But once you start doing it, it becomes easier and easier and easier, and you'll be surprised. But it is hard at first. Okay, so positive jar, 10 positives, daily prayer. Now, this is something I started a number of years ago. I actually have a prayer calendar next to my bed, and it's just simple, like it could be simple verses or a simple prayer that you want to say. But I want you to think about whenever it works for you. It could be when you get in the car in the morning. It could be in the shower. It could be right before you go to bed. It could be right when you wake up. I don't care when it is. I like to attach things to routine because I know if I do it every day, it could be when you brush your teeth. It doesn't matter. So I attach it to something that I do every day, and I know that when I do that thing, I'm going to say a prayer for each of my children. And I don't care what you pray about, but I want you to pray about each of your children. Sometimes we do those blanket prayers like, oh, please watch over my children. I want you to actually pray about each of them because there's probably something on your mind that you want to pray about each of them. And I want you to do it. It could take you 30 seconds to do, but I want you to intentionally pray about things because not only are you praying to God, which is huge, but you're also intentionally thinking in your head about each kid and kind of what you want for them or a specific thing you're thinking about them or something they're struggling with. It's really important, okay? So that's 3 things. Plus, we also talked about the rules, okay? These are all establishing those beginning foundational skills. All right. This is also from the Tough Kid Parent book. So when we talked about that intentional teaching, this is just a little add-on for you to think about. If you use selective attention, which is kind of what that positive reward thing is that if you want to add attention to the positive reinforcing behaviors, and you want to subtract some of the attention away from the misbehavior. Part of that is changing your brain, so you're actually catching the positives, and you're making an actual statement about the positives. What we tend to do, as we recognize on social media, as people, as all human people, we tend to talk about the negative things or the things that are going badly 90% more than we talk about the positive things. Think about your work. What do you spend the time talking about? Are you talking about the things that are going well or the things that are not going well? We're almost always talking about the things we're having problems with. So you want to make sure that you're selectively attending and giving attention to the positive, because that's what you want to build and increase, so you pay attention to the good. This talks about like ignoring the bad. Don't worry, I'm not saying you're only going to ignore the bad. I promise we're going to talk about what do you do when the bad happens, because I'm not a silly person that just thinks it's just going to go away. But sometimes when you increase the positive, the bad does kind of sift away. It becomes less apparent. It may not go away altogether, but it will decrease tremendously. So remember, if you walk away with nothing else, the one thing I want you to walk away with tonight is that if things start going poorly in your house, you need to increase the positives. Even though you don't feel like it, that's what you need to do. And you might be surprised. So I want you to go home and try this. The rules, the positives, the positive jar, 10 positives to every person in your household, even though it might feel a little strange at first. Praying, and then I hope you might come back next week and we'll talk about the next thing, and you can tell me maybe how that's going for you. But it does really, really help. All right, so these are the foundations, because tonight we're talking about the foundations of discipline. Structure and predictability, which is the house rules, increased teaching, positive jar, 10 positive each day, daily prayer. Okay, so now you get to ask me questions. Okay, so next week we're talking about discipline for frustrating behaviors, part 1. And we're going to be talking about things such as tantrums, whining, talking back, all those things that are not the best things in the world. But, so now, if you have questions about anything, this is the time you can ask me. Go ahead.
So I have 3 kids. I did the jar thing in the past. They each have their own jar and it's very competitive, of course. I don't think one jar is going to take away that competitiveness.
Mm-hmm.
The 8-year-old definitely is at that it's not fair stage, and the 10-year-old has never gotten out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then I have an 11-year-old. So the 10-year-old is constantly, it's not fair, it's not fair, it's not fair. I can see it. So like you say, they can't ask for them, you can't take them away. So but then you stated, if the one sister does something and then she put the marble in the jar, yet she pulls her hair,
Right.
you still put the marble. So would that be the same thing if I say, oh, thank you, and put the marble in it, that was great, and she's like, that was my 4th marble, and you only have 2.
Mm-hmm.
Do I still put the marble, or am I going to, I just don't want to feed
A negative behavior. So I'm going to rephrase that question. So there was a lot of stuff. So she talked about how she has 3 kids. There's sometimes they're competitive about it. Let's say you put if you put a marble in for one kid and then the other kids, and she might say I got 3 marbles. So it causes a negative behavior. Do you still put it in? Do you not put it in? So it's all good. You're right. That's all good stuff. And that's all where our brain goes. I would. So number 1, to answer your question, yes, the marble still goes in, because she did do the positive behavior to start with to get it in. We're going to talk about the competitive, because it's not really the competitive side that is the problem. The problem is that they're using the inappropriate talk to one another. They're saying mean things to one another. So it's not the competitiveness that the problem is, it's that they're saying mean things to each other. So we're going to talk about the meanness, but at this point, we're going to ignore that. We're going to pretend that didn't happen. We're going to ignore that. We're going to give this, but I would make sure that if there's other kids in your household, if you notice, and if they start saying, it's not fair, why'd they get a marble? And be and I love saying this, all right, do something, I'm going to catch you. Okay, but remember, you can't tell me. You can't tell me, but I'm going to start watching. Okay, I'm really going to watch. I'm going to try to catch you in the next 10 minutes. So do something so I can catch you, okay? And then, go out, and then if, then really try to catch something. Keep your eye on them. Catch them doing something good. And if somebody says, no fair, you caught me. Well, okay, do something. I am watching you. I'm watching you. Do it. And go in, but you can wait 15 minutes. You can wait 20 minutes. Try to catch something. So have it become something positive. Just be like, great, I want to catch you. Come on, let me see it. Bring it on. I want to give you 15 marbles. Let's do it. Kind of thing. So create an opportunity. They can get a whole bunch. And that might just mean that you need to start adding more in. And then if somebody says, then they'll say, look, I just did this. Can I get a marble? My reaction to that always is, darn it. Shoot, you did that. That was so awesome. I wish I could give you a marble, but it's against the rules. Okay, so now don't ask, but do it again, and I'll try to catch you. Now, you're not going to hang out and wait for them to do it again. Go about your day. And if you catch them, great. If you don't catch them, that's okay, but be looking for something else positive in the night to catch them doing. So I always try to build that in, especially because you will have little, like mother hens or the ones who are worried about the fairness that will say, did you see me? Did you see me? I shared that. Oh man, that is so cool. And I so would have given you a marble. Okay, now make sure that you're doing it because I so want to catch you next time. So, just like, darn it. Okay, I'm going to get it. Kind of thing. And that's a very positive way to do it. It encourages them to do more. Because it's their behavior that has to get it. So they have to do more of it. That's a way to handle it. We will talk about the mean talk. What do you do about the mean talk? In this instance, we're talking about the positive and how they can get more positive. We will talk about the mean talk next week, I promise. I'm not going to leave you hanging. But there's a few different levels to what you need to do for that. Okay, other questions about what we talked about? We still have 4 minutes. Now is the time. No? I'm going to wait a weirdly uncomfortable amount of time. Okay, you guys have been a great group. Thank you for coming. I hope you'll go home and you'll try out those homework things. They're really fun. And then come back next week and we'll do part 1 for the frustrating behaviors. And I'll give you some stuff to try on top of the behaviors or the positive behaviors. Okay? Thank you for coming so much.